Hi, all. Welcome to the episode 2 of The Learning Illusion Rethinking Learning from the Inside Out. We often hear that AI is transforming learning, but I wonder if we are asking the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't how do we teach people AI? Maybe it's how do we ensure AI doesn't stop people from thinking? Our today's guest has spent over 2 decades building capability across global organizations. From leading large scale learning transformation to exploring AI enabled workforce development, she brings both practical experience and thoughtful reflection to one of the biggest shifts happening in the workplace learning right now. Welcome, Charu, to the Learning Illusion.
Thank you so much, Richa. It's wonderful to be here, and congratulations for starting off the Learning Illusion. I think a platform like this will certainly help every one of us in solving some of those, questions that keep haunting us every now and then as we go about our business as usual. So, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Welcome again. So, Charu, you have spent over 20 years in learning now. So, if I asked you what worries you the most about the future of workplace learning, what would your answer be?
See, the entire workplace, not just L&D, but the entire workplace setup is changing. One, because we have a new generation coming up, which is full of information. They have an information download right from the very early stage. So when these people join the workplace, you can expect a lot of transformation. So as an L&D person, as a training person, we should expect trainings which are shorter, shorter duration training, short duration trainings, because attention span is very limited. I recently did a workshop on understanding the Gen Z. It's like decoding Gen Z. And the focus was for having sessions which have, very, very sharp points, bullet points, but very interactive because the attention span is not more than 8 seconds. So as an L&D person, I would say a couple of changes that we see in future is one, lesser and lesser dependability on trainers, because today the entire training function is moving from trainer dependency to a more self-directed learning approach, where one, there are a lot of modules which are video-based modules, interactive modules. Secondly, there are a lot of AI tools which have been introduced, such as chatbots where once an agent is or a learner is completing the curriculum, they have a question, they write it on the board, and they get the answer. Now, where does the trainer role fit in actually? The trainer's role would fit in doing coaching sessions more and driving discussions more rather than the standard traditional 8 hour ILT session where the trainer used to continuously stand and train. That is gone. Even today, if you look, the amount a trainer spends actually facilitating a session is far less than what it used to be. And now, in the coming days, with a lot more interactive modules and chatbots and other chat AI tools that help in simulations. This duration of the trainer actually being there in the classroom and assisting with facilitation is going to go down more. So I think it would be a lot of cutting edge technology adoption in the training fraternity as well. That's what we see as a future. Lesser dependency on trainer, more tool utilization, and more focus on improving the learning curve, basically using these tools. That's what I personally feel.
So you very well covered how the dynamics are changing for L&D. Very well covered for that. And so was there a moment recently that completely changed the way you think about learning, or is this like kind of these moments or any specific moment?
I would say that this was a gradual process, Richa, because in last 6 years, we have seen a tremendous change in the LMS platforms, tremendous change. So there was a time when, 6 years back, pre-COVID days, when everything was PPT text heavy modules, right? Then post-COVID era, we saw that video gradually simulations and video based interactive modules were embedded, not largely, but to some extent. The ILTs were still the main focus. And now, as we see in last 2 years, there has been a rapid expansion in the way the entire elements change. Now, the text heavy PPTs are gone. What we see is either one, animated versions, to video-based simulations, interactive, assessments. Even assessments, the way assessments used to happen have changed, and they're gamified assessments everywhere. So I think last 2 years have been when you saw that transformation happening, and right now the transformation is moving very, very fast. So I think that moment I would say is 2 years back, and now we can feel it rapidly happening with trainers' role changing, and the entire training setup is changing. So I think I would date it back to like the actual start was some 2 years back, I would say.
Yeah, like from 2 years back, generative AI, when it actually became prevalent, like AI was there since long, but this generative AI has changed the picture completely. Like you very well said that it's just like last 2 to 3 years, maximum 3 years, not more than that. Yeah. Right? So generative AI has changed the landscape completely. Right? So
I would also add one piece, I'm sorry, that, Gen AI also was there, but the accessibility was not there. A lot of people did not have the access because one of the cost, two of they were not aware. But today, with so much of exposure, even a kid these days would know how ChatGPT would work, right? For example, and they would create manga and they would create some pictures and videos with that. So I think exposure is what mattered the most. And now is a turning point because every single person who comes into the industry, whether it's a BPO, whether it's any other industry, they know some bit of AI already because they're using some of the other tools. So now to address this change in the population that's becoming a workforce, the organizations will have to change the way they look at the workforce. Traditional trainings, methodologies would not work for them at all.
definitely. Because yes, AI, it's just not like we are using it in our professional environment, it's in our personal lives as well. And very much in our personal lives and the next generation which is coming in. Like if you said that usage of Chat GPT, which actually, created that transformation because it was very, very easy to use. So I remember before me, my son used Chat GPT. He was hands on with it, and I didn't even knew see about of Chat GPT. So yes, and that's the change that we are having, and that's because of generative AI. So moving on, if we move on to the AI part, because it's the buzzword and it has to be part of every conversation. I was well, are we actually building learners, or, we are simply, telling them how to be better AI users? Like organizations are investing heavily in AI. But I'm wondering, could we accidentally produce faster workers while producing weaker thinkers?
It's a great thought, and a great question, Richa. So I recently did, a study on understanding that how is the brain or cognitive abilities different for those who are actively using AI and those who are not actively using AI. The study revealed that the people who are not using AI that frequently and are still dependent on their manual research, their learning, retention, and the depth was far higher than those who are actually using AI. Now, that does not defend the fact that we should not adopt the technologies. Having said so, it means that we should use AI as a supporting tool. Now, whatever output the AI is giving us, that needs to be validated by a human in loop. Now, what do we do with the users? Blindly giving them a tool is not the right approach. So, as a director training in my organization, what we are doing is that we are running an AI upskilling program for 100% of our employees. That means that we are going to teach them or train them right on what AI is, what is prompt engineering, how do you use that? Because if we give them a cheat sheet and say that, okay, this is the tool, you put this prompt and you get this output, it will merely be a copy paste. And at times it will start producing wrong results, right? So what we need to imbibe in them is how to use a prompt, where to use it. They need to still use their cognitive abilities and understand that in this situation this is what needs to be used, or in that situation this is the right prompt I should be giving. So I think if we just give them a tool and say that, okay, you're going to use this, at some point, Richa, I feel that the productivity, if it's, going high, it's going to fall down. The quality is going to be devastatingly low because people are not understanding how to use it correctly. They're just trying to simplify the work and let's just go get done with that. And you would see this happening more frequently when people build PPTs, right? So now it's simply give a command to Claude, This is what I want. And Claude gives you an entire deck, even if it's 70 slider, in max 10 minutes. Max 10 minutes.
Yes.
But what happens if you just blindly go ahead and send that deck to your stakeholders, or use that in a classroom training? You would see it's a very high level. It doesn't have depth. Depth is what you need to create into that. So I think making people understand what is AI, how do you actually use an AI for your benefit, and just keep flexing that cognitive muscle that you have, that is very important. Otherwise, we're gonna let go of that muscle memory that we have of how to do researches, how to do manual interventions, and just be dependent on AI completely. So that's the approach I would recommend. Train people in the right usage. Give them that learning, and don't give them cheat codes. That's what I would say.
Yeah, right. I also agree on that. Like, let us make AI as an enabler, not something that we completely depend on, right? Human capabilities has to be there. Like, if AI is giving an output, what is the question that you are asking to AI? That's much more important because it'll give the output whatever intelligent question you are, whatever level of question you are asking it. So I mean, you should have that thinking process on within yourself that what is the result I need, right? And as I also, when I take sessions and all, I also say like, you have a problem to solve, right? You have a problem to solve, see which tool can solve it, and then think through your problem, what actually result you need. Just make AI on your enabler, and it's a beautiful blend that humans and AI can work together, and then it'll be more productive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So see, I saw your LinkedIn post as well, Sharu. So you recently wrote something that really stayed with me. When AI does the easy thinking, what happens to the people doing it? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So the background I just gave you that, even so I use tools such as Claude, ChatGPT in video very, very frequently, because if I have to build a video, or if I'm working on some, some material, I use AI. But then there was this question that came into my head, that I'm using this so frequently. But then is this sufficient? Am I becoming too dependent? And that's when, I started analyzing my own self, that how was the working ways different from when I used to do all manual researches. They used to stay in my head. So even today, if you build something using one of these tools, you will not remember 100% of the content, because that's not your effort that's gone into doing the research. You may practice it by delivering it constantly, but you won't remember everything. But then, I think that is where a deeper level of cognitive approach should come, that whatever output AI is giving you, make sure you go through it, add value to it, make changes to suit the audience that you're building it for, and not just blindly send it across. And still, I would say that don't just put a prompt and say, build this. Give your own thought process to those tools, right? Give some context, your own ideas, and then let AI build upon that. And that is how your cognitive capabilities will keep enhancing as well, while you do a handshake with the AI and tools.
So, like, yeah, cognitive ability, as you were mentioning. So, which cognitive abilities do you think organizations are, unknowingly allowing people to lose because of
I think their ability to think through things is something that the people who don't understand the right way of using an AI tool will go away, right? Because if we don't think at all, and we just put a command saying that, okay, hey, ChatGPT, build this for me, without having your own original thought process, that is where this thinking thought process, it, that thinking ability is the most important ability a human would have, right? And that is what will become weakened time on time. And then you would see that people who are even using, you know, tools such as Copilot or ChatGPT to even write an email. I think that's the worst we can do for ourselves. We should not, ask Copilot to draft an email and send, because you're not even thinking through what you're writing into it. So I think that's where the thinking ability is getting deteriorated if we continuously depend heavily on tools. I'm a huge supporter of AI. I think our productivity is 10 times more than previously, but I would say that use it as a partner, right? As a companion who's helping you in building something better, rather than just blindly going with those tools. So I always tell my folks that give your own thought process to these tools, Then ask them to refine them and build them further. Just don't ask them, okay, do this for me, without giving them any of your own original thoughts to it.
Yeah, like that's the best way of doing. I also support that. Have your original thoughts, give it to whatever LLM you are using, Claude, ChatGPT, or whatever, Copilot, and then let it enhance it. So at least the base should be your own thought
Your
process.
original thought.
Yes, your original, and you rightly said, like we are using it so extensively. We are using it for emails as well, responding to email, which we used to do it at our own. I remember I used to write, respond to emails, long emails with bullet points, and now we are using Copilot or whatever LLM. Even worse, people are using it for messages, for responding to messages. Yeah, and just not professional messages, personal messages as well. I mean, that is something, very worrisome.
Yeah. And it has become a habit, Richa. So earlier, you would write a warm wish for somebody, wishing you a very, very happy birthday. And today you think that, okay, the last time I sent a message was very nicely drafted and all. So let me again ask ChatGPT to send me a warm note for thanking somebody, right? And that is where you are losing and you realize, and at one point you'll question yourself, yeah, I used to write this myself earlier. And now I'm asking GPT. I don't even remember how I used to write, and that is where you should be more aware that no, this is not going in the right direction. I'm losing something that was my original thought. I think that's where people should stop and give it a thought of how well they need to use the AI tools.
Yeah, just now like birthday message or something personal. Obviously, we used to write and it had a personal touch in that. Now every message looks similar. Every wish looks similar. They are very polished, very beautifully written, but it misses that human content, right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
it messes the you factor actually. And
exactly.
as a person, yeah, you are true, true.
Yeah. So, like, what does thinking first and prompting second actually look like inside an organization? Or maybe, I mean, that's one question. Or maybe, what would you insist every learner practice before opening ChatGPT or Claude or whatever LLM?
Okay, so there are different levels how people should use it. So let's begin with managers first. Now let's assume a situation where a manager is writing a document or creating a PPT for some analysis or something like the TNI we do, right? Now, earlier, if you remember, what we used to do is we'd manually audit everything, analyze the results. But today, what people are doing, they're putting everything on a tool and asking for the output, which is not nothing wrong, right? But even when you get that output out of a tool, the first thing you should do is analyze everything yourself, that this is what the problem statement was. Are the five whys or are the RCS matching up to it? If yes, what additional can I add to it that is not a part of this? Because that is something I know. The tool doesn't know, right? Because tool will only work on that much of information that you are feeding it with. You gave him a data set, but there is something more that you already know. So, for a manager or any other leader, I would recommend that you draft the first cut yourself, right? Or even if you're not writing the first cut yourself, at least jot down the bullet points that these should be a part of it. This is my thought process, or this is my analysis of it. Include it into the document or onto the PPT that you're creating, and that's when the deck would come out, which will have your own original analysis as well as a refined version of it that has been given to you by these tools as an output. Then you again relocate it whether it is looking correct or not, and then you further refine or make some cuts or edits if you have to. Now let's go back to a new learner, a new joiner, as a new hire, right? Now if we directly give them a tool and say that these are the prompts that have been used very frequently, you have to use them only. Then let's say there comes a situation where the customer is highly angry, you need to use some of the emotional intelligence elements, but they don't know because they haven't given a cheat code. So what first we need to make them understand is what is emotional intelligence, how will you add those factors into your responses, or how can you actually build a proper prompt. Let's say that there's a situation, a customer bought something online and dissatisfied completely, and then they're sending you a complaint that this is what has happened, and there's an element that was something very important and they missed that, the entire event went wrong or something. Now what they give a prompt that customer is irate, product was faulty. The the response that AI tool, ChatGPT, Copilot, or any other tool that they're using would be, some elements of apologies, this and that, and then that's it. But then there could be a broader element to it. For example, putting your own thoughts and words into it, that this event was important to you, we understand, and this happened. Let me give you a quick solution. Let me call you back, do this outreach. So human touch for complexities need to be trained and talk to these people rather than just giving them a cheat sheet. So, as I said earlier in the beginning, that coaching them or training them on how to use prompt or how to create prompting, right? They need to understand that what is prompt engineering? How do you create prompts as per the situation? That is important for them. And then only you go ahead, create your right kind of a prompt, look at the output, analyze the output, and then send it across rather than just blindly copy pasting the whole stuff.
Yeah, like prompting is the base for any AI tool. You should know how to do a good prompting. You'll get results from any AI tool. And that should be something coming from you. You know the situation, you know the solution, and obviously there should be a human element in it. So you know it all, right? So how you are giving prompt, that's a base for be it any complex AI tool or everything is working on prompt. And one thing that you rightly said is like if a customer is angry and if you're just, giving whatever chat GPT gave us and we are responding, so that misses that human element. I personally feel if I have to talk to a bot, I really get irritated. I need a human interact, yeah. For
Absolutely.
if any, if I call up any customer care and it's a automated message or a bot responding, I really, really get frustrated because when you are logging a complaint, that means you're already frustrated, and then it is just giving you automated answers and everything, so it adds on to the fury. So yes, the human element has to be there and it has to be intelligently blended with AI.
True. And the thing with prompting is that there's a formula for prompting, right? First of all, you give a context. Then you set the task that what exactly is you want. Then you give them then in your prompt, you should give a format that now you understand what is the context. This is the context I've written. This is the task that I want you to do. I want the output in this particular format. And then you also have to give it the constraints that this is my boundary. And you give me the response as per this boundary. So there's a proper formula. And if we just blindly give prompts, then you will not get a result that you are actually looking for. So training them or making them understand what exactly is prompting, how do you do it, what are different kinds of prompting technologies, everything needs to be taught before you go ahead and just hand over a tool to them. There are larger chances of them making an error or not
Like
getting the right.
prompting basically works on GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
And yes, for the guardrails, you have to put in guardrails, otherwise it hallucinates. Now it doesn't much like you previously. ChatGPT used to hallucinate like anything, because these LLMs are designed to please us, right? So they get information from wherever they can find, or they'll make it up. I have seen that myself. ChatGPT gave me a response about something and it didn't even existed. So I had to question back. Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously you have to read through whatever it is giving, and obviously prompting whatever you're giving in. If you're just giving one short prompt, it will just give that response. If you're giving the proper, setting a context and you telling it what you need, then setting up the guardrails as well, then only it, gives you a better output.
And then, going back to human capabilities again, which I think thinking is one, being curious is another, right?
Right.
So as you rightly said, that you question ChatGPT again. So being curious about, okay, this is the output, but then how did we arrive at this, right? I'll give you one example. So my 7-year-old daughter, she learned AI by seeing me use ChatGPT very frequently, right? So what she did, so there's a difference. So when I am using the same ChatGPT, I am uploading my picture. Then ChatGPT's response is, "Hi, you look tired," or "Hi, you look this and that. How is the day going on?" Right? It doesn't give me anything else, but then it analyzes my face. On the other hand, when my daughter uploads her picture, it will build a manga comics for her. Automatically put up a prompt and then create a small clip with manga, right? So I was really surprised and I questioned ChatGPT and I said that why is this happening? Then it said, oh, you are really curious minded. It could be because, this is how it is done. I said, no, every time. And we did this experiment online. I immediately posted a picture of mine. I took a picture, I uploaded on a fresh chat with no prompt, nothing, just the way my daughter does it. It again asked me the question, you look tired, you've recently met with an accident. How was it? Because, I keep talking, and sometimes that's a much more customized version that I have. But I again uploaded my daughter's picture and again created a manga. So maybe the learning, the cognition that they are having, there's much more deeper which is happening, which we are probably not privy to it. But then if you don't question, if you're not curious in asking those questions, we will never understand what's the logic that goes behind on different kind of responses that you generate from the same chat window. So I think being curious is one, and questioning and then analyzing is the other cognitive ability I would say that we should not let go. Question everything that a tool is giving you as an output rather than just blindly believing it.
Right, like pushing back. At times, pushing back really worked for me because it was giving haywire and something. I said, no, this is like this only. And then I pushed back, and then we had a different level of conversation. So obviously,
Yeah.
it understands what questions you are asking. See, I've been using ChatGPT for more than a year now, and it's much customized for me.
Yeah.
So for my brother, he started using it, and it was giving different answers to him, and for the same question, and it was giving a different answers to me. So it's it's just learning with you. Whatever
Yeah.
questions you are asking, whatever conversation you're having, you can make your bots smarter.
Correct.
That.
Correct. It's machine learning. The more you feed them, the more you give them a training data to learn from, and your questions, the kind of responses you look at from it, it's all training it about you. That what is that you expect out of it, versus any other person using the same window, they'll get a different response. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. So that naturally brings me to another question. We often use words like competency, capability, readiness almost interchangeably, right? So how do you define capability?
Great question. So, what is competency? Competency is that I know what I need to do, right? But capability is that am I able to consistently deliver that? Now, competency could be knowing the product knowledge, process knowledge, where you need to access the knowledge base, etc. But capability is when we are using this competency to deliver consistently under ambiguity, under pressure, under different kind of situation. That is where your capability lies. So, let's suppose in a training room, there are 20 people sitting. Now, every person is learning the same thing. Their competencies are the same because they are learning through the same product process, but their capabilities differ because how much are they using these abilities such as judgment, emotional intelligence, prioritization. This is your capability, how you deliver what you have learned, what is a part of your competency. So this is how I would define that competency is how your ability to do a task, but capability is delivering it consistently and using things like judgment, prioritization, etc. This is what I feel about, or this is should be the way we should look at competency and capability.
So, I mean, is it right to say that someone who scores 100% in a training and may still not be capable, right?
Absolutely. He might not be a capable in a situation which is different for that person. In a training room, usually what happens? Either we use mock session, traditional mock session, where a trainer is asking, becoming a customer or any other, as per the campaign. Let's assume customer. He's becoming a customer and asking a set of questions. Now the agent also knows, sitting there, the learner knows that even if I mess up, there's no consequence attached to it. I would add marks, get a poor marks, get a feedback, that's all. But similarly, in a live environment, if the same learner messes up, right, is not capable enough to answer it appropriately, there's a repercussion to it. There's a consequence to it because the agent then doesn't know that giving a wrong answer to a customer may lead to a further escalation, a ding on the scores, or on the money factor as well, right? So I think the sandbox environment is great when it comes to competencies, but capability is usually tested when somebody is in a live environment going through different kind of situations.
Yeah, like capability actually reveal itself under pressure, right?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
like consequence is the real assessment, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
We can learn. like in my last podcast as well, my guest, I mean, he very rightly quoted, like, you know how to, drive a bicycle, but can you drive it on a terrain? Can you, ride it on a uphill or something? So that's capability. And how is it developed? It's developed when you are actually in that situation, on repeat.
True.
Yeah,
True.
outside the training room when you actually face the heat. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
So since you had mentioned simulations in our messages as well in our LinkedIn DM, everybody says like simulation builds capability. But does it actually do that? I mean, where do you think simulation genuinely prepare people? And where do they create a false sense of confidence, like overconfidence in that case?
Yeah. Sometimes simulations may give a learner a false sense of confidence because usually in simulation it's a safe environment. As we were talking about consequences, the learner knows that there is no consequence attached to it, right? There is no real customer who's getting impacted. So I can practice on it multiple times. Now a simulation builds the competency, right? Because it is repeatedly giving you different kinds of um, situations to practice upon. So as long as you are there in those situations, and if the simulation is not based on multiple kinds of human behavior that can be observed in a similar kind of a use case. Okay, let's take a very simple example that I bought something online and I need to refund it. Now, when a customer calls for refund also, there are different moods, right? The customer could be angry, furious, reserved, he could be skeptic. There could be many things that can happen to the customer mood. But if we create a simulation which is only based on a neutral kind of a customer who says, okay, fine, I need refund, how many days it will take, and the call gets disconnected, then the agent will develop competency only on this kind of a situation because simulation practices happen so far. Will he be capable of doing the thing if, let's suppose, in a real scenario, the customer comes up, but he is not neutral, he's angry, very talkative, or wants an immediate solution or escalation, the learner may panic, right? So what exactly the simulation is doing, it is building our competency by making us practice through situations repeatedly on everyday basis. They're giving us tool free fluency, script fluency, they're giving us process fluency, which is great. But capability will only come when we make them practice through different scenarios, which are very wide as per the human nature, because at the end of the day we are dealing with humans only, right?
Yeah.
So we cannot just depend heavily on simulations alone. It has to be both. The trainer needs to assess, or in any organization, leaving everything on simulation alone will not help, because this will not open their horizon to understand that beyond simulations there could be many other kind of responses that they can get from an actual customer.
Definitely.
Accountability cannot be generated merely by simulations. Accountability is a capability.
Right, definitely. I agree 100%. So, what's one capability that cannot be simulated?
Accountability, I just told you, accountability cannot be replicated, it cannot be created through pure simulations only. It is a behavior accountability.
Right.
Right, in a sandbox environment everything is safe. In a safe environment accountability usually doesn't exist. It would only exist when you attach a consequence to it, right? You tell the learner that this is the outcome, right? This is the consequence. If you fail the sandbox, you're not moving ahead. You're going back home. Your job is gone. For example, let's say that. I'm not saying that we do this but I'm just attaching an example to say that how consequences changes, or consequence becomes a test of your readiness or capability, right? So whenever there's a consequence, only then you would feel accountability coming in, because then you know that you're responsible for delivering something right. Right. So even simulation should have a consequence attached to it. Otherwise, the governance framework will collapse.
Definitely, right. And I think accountability is a core skill. It's a competency, it's a core skill. There's a few of our critical thinking, it's again a core skill, right? And accountability is a core skill. So, what we used to call these as soft skills now are become core skills, and people are calling them life skills as well. So, yes, accountability is again a life skill, and yes, if a consequence is attached, then people are more accountable. That's very true.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
yeah, sorry,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, no. I'll just move in. Yeah.
Yeah, just saying on the consequences that whenever the stakes become real, right? Everything changes. Your emotion, your pace of handling thing, your cost of error, everything will change, Richa,
Right.
because of just because
Yes.
the stakes have become real, the consequences have become real.
Right, right, right. Because within a training room, everybody knows, oh, it's just a 1 day training. We'll just, chill out and then we'll move out. So that learning part, if we attach it to it, that if we do not score well or if we do not, have these results in this, then people will be more accountable and more serious about the training interventions, you
True.
know?
True.
So, moving away from AI for now, I noticed one theme in your writing. If I'm saying writing, it's your LinkedIn post that I have seen. Leadership seems less about having answers and more about helping people think better. So, do you think the role of leader is changing because of AI?
Not necessarily because of AI purely, Richa. I think it is the dynamic of the workplace that has changed. One, people earlier, if you look at, I share an example from my journey. So when I joined the workforce way back in 2004, right? At that time, I never knew about what is emotional intelligence or, or what are other themes, respect and cultural nuances of an organization. What I knew, I started off at a very young age. While I was studying, I started working. So at that time, my only motive was that, okay, I need to earn money. That will fulfill for my pocket money as well, and then I'm good. I'm sorted. Because at that time the mindset was not there. But now, if you look at the younger generation, the Gen Zs, if you look at when they come to workplace, right, they expect work-life balance. They want mental peace. They want emotionally intelligent people around them, right? And for them, they are the priorities, right? So the entire workflow force is changing, and plus there is a overexposure of information everywhere. There are multiple sources of information. So
Yes.
the role of a leader now is to make sure, one, they are available to answer, right, and guide the people in the direction. Because
Mm.
if with so much of information overload, the leaders are not able to answer the question with transparency, right, complete transparency, then the trust will never be built, because information is everywhere. But what is the right thing to learn, to understand, to know, and to guide them? A situation like that I mentioned in one of my posts was about, let's say, because of AI, people are very, very apprehensive. Are they going to lose job? Is AI replacing them? And there are organizations that have been hiring and firing people, right? That becomes a very messy situation, because now people are scared that, okay, it is because of AI that so many people have lost their jobs.
Mm.
There could be different reasons to it. They could be different because the organization is restructuring the way they've been handling things. Some of the things may have become obsolete, and hence they don't need so many people. But if a leader doesn't come on the forum and answer the question with complete honesty and transparency, that will create more problems for the organization. No, because you always trust somebody who is the face and would come to you and answer your question, listen to you very carefully and address your questions and answer whatever they can answer at that point in time, right?
Mm.
So I think the role of a leader has changed from purely being somebody who tells them what you need to do to somebody who works with examples and tells you that this is what is happening, this is what I know at the moment, this is where we are headed to, and somebody who empowers them continuously, right? Giving them that kind of liberty, giving them those opportunities to empower it for themselves so that the threat goes away.
Right.
That's how a leadership position is changing.
So if I say like which human capabilities become even more valuable now are these core skills, right?
Core skills.
So like you are transparent that we never knew when I started off. Like I started off at the same time almost as you mentioned. At that time, transparency, emotional intelligence, we didn't knew it existed in the workplace. Right. So but now, yes, as you rightly said, that people, especially because of Gen Zs, I'm saying because millennials are still working in the same manner, so they are asking for it, right? They need support, they need trust, they need transparency, and they need someone who backs them. If they are trying something new, they are backed up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, that yeah, that has been changing, and I think it's a good change. I'm really liking it. It has to be there.
Absolutely. See, because now we even as millennials, we are much more empowered than what we were maybe some 10 years down the line, right? Now, the constant threat in our minds or the anxiety still is there, but then we still know that, this is what I'm capable of today, and I'm not that much anxious because I know that I have this much of experience. I know this, I know that. And plus, I know that there would be broader horizons for me. So that constant fear is not there. But yes, there are different kinds of anxieties that come at workplace together. However, as a leader, if you know that there is a certain leader who's standing there at the forum and you know that this leader is empowering you, then
Yeah.
that trust itself becomes a motivator. And I will not shy away from quoting that one of such leaders. I'm blessed to be working with this kind of leaders. We have within TP, we have Ashish Kaparia, who is one of our leaders, and the way he has empowered people ever since he's come in and joined the workforce at TP is changing, is transformational. He's given people so much of power to experiment, to do things. And I am running so many more projects than I was running maybe 2 years down the line. Just because I know that there's so much of trust that he has in my capability, in my team's capability, that we can run multiple things. Even if we fail at some point in time, or we're not able to deliver 100% of the results that are expected out of us, still we know that he will listen to us. He will probably work with us in identifying that what were the root causes. And that I would say is a leadership. That is a leadership skill that is required in today's world. And so there are a lot of many other leaders that I can quote, our training leaders, Karen Bamji or, Mohammed Sinan, and there's so many other people in TP. And, you'd see them frequently posting something about these topics on LinkedIn as well. But I think that is where you learn the real lessons, of what a leadership is and how it is changing now, how the leaders themselves are transforming themselves.
So basically, it's the psychological safety that a leader gives.
Yes.
So, which is very important for people to grow, because if they'll experiment, they'll fail, then only they'll grow. For that, they need a psychological safety, a backup from a leader that, okay, you go ahead, I'm there, I'm watching you, right? In a positive manner. So that really makes a difference. So if we talk, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Just on this bit, see, yes, the leader would always be there, but as the subordinates, we also need to understand that where we draw the line, that we don't over bombard them with the requests constantly. There should be a learning. We should not walk up to them every time with problems only, and that is important. You need to come up with solutions, not just problems. That okay, I'm having this problem, give me a solution. So a leader should give you a solution once, twice, but then you need to learn their way of thinking and understanding that if they can bring a solution, why can't I bring a solution? So you come with a problem, you come with a solution, your thought, process about solution, and then you bring it both. And that's how you then become a manager, right? Or you then become into that leadership position that you are somebody who can think through solutions as well.
Yeah, like it's like if a leader is giving us solutions once or twice, then we have to think through, if he can do it, I can also do it. And that's how learning from your leader. That's how it becomes, right? When we say that leaders produce leader, a good leader produces leaders, then it is on the subordinate that you are actually learning from your leader, rather than depending on him or her for everything. Yeah.
True. Very true.
So when we're talking about these skills, as in the core skills, if I say emotional intelligence, judgment, curiosity, out of these, which one would you invest in first? Which you think is, important?
I think emotional intelligence is very important. Currently, I think this is one thing that most of the organizations are, uh, doing extensively programs on emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence is not just all about emotions or understanding. It is about a lot of things that an employee can change within themselves. For example, their ability to take risk, their ability to assess a situation, their ability to go for certain opportunities, assessing the risk, the stability factors, and everything. Where even when they're making some business, decisions, then also emotional intelligence plays a huge role. So I think one of the skills that today the organization are investing heavily, apart from AI, is on emotional intelligence. Very, very critical skill.
Right. I totally agree. And I totally rely on emotional intelligence, as it is very important. Just right. Just not about regulating your emotions, but being capable of doing more, being capable of understanding other people, being capable of understanding the situation. So even if it goes worse, if you are emotionally intelligent, you'll handle the situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's much more important, right? All right. So moving on to the next round, this is a lightning round. I mean, a little fun out here. So it's kind of a rapid fire. So you have to be quick, no explanations, just one word answer, right?
Okay.
Let's go for it. Ready?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Capability or competency?
Capability.
Learning or performance?
Learning.
Prompting or thinking?
Thinking.
Curiosity or knowledge?
Curiosity.
Simulations or experience?
I don't think simulation creates an experience only. What's the experience?
I, I think it's like simulation is in that in safe environment and experience is actually under pressure. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. All right. So one capability every leader should build.
Emotional intelligence.
One AI myth people should stop believing.
It's always right.
Very true. One learning illusion organizations still believe.
Completion is uh, capability. I would say that if they are actually driving a program and they believe that completion will change, 100% completion means behavior has changed or capability has arrived. That's one thing which is incorrect.
I totally agree on that. I mean, it's very close to my heart because when we say that learning and development has to give business outcomes now, so we just can't go ahead with completion percentage, right? We have to see what changed after the training, after people moved out of the training room, when they are in the actual situation, does the behavior change? That's right. All right. So that was the end of rapid fire. You performed very well.
Okay.
So now, Charu, like imagine if we are having this conversation 5 years from now in 2030 or 31, wherever AI has become part of everyone's work by 31, right? Looking back, what do you hope L&D leaders started doing today that made the biggest difference?
Empowering people by not just giving them tools, but training them on the basics of AI, and most importantly, training them on prompt engineering, because that will become a great game changer, at least for next 5 years. Then there will come a time when probably even prompts are not needed, because I believe that Claude or some, I heard that people are also going without prompts, automating it in a very different way. But I think for next 5 years, the entire learning function or the organization should focus on upskilling people rather than creating that fear that they could be replaced anytime. Because if you have people who are performing really well without so much of tools right now that they're handling, maybe exposure to tool is limited, and if they're performing still very good, just think that how much of more productivity or capability they will bring if you upskill them rightly. So I think upskilling the people to handle complex tasks and leave the generic tasks to AI would help. But for them, they need to start today in upskilling the people, in training them the right way, because that would be a game changer.
Yeah, right. Because AI is going to change. I mean, it's rapidly changing and moving ahead, it will change. Like as you rightly said, prompts might not be needed and it has come. Like in Claude, it's the skill. It's a skill prompting now, right? So you just create a skill and it has to be used again and again, and that's how you do it. So maybe 5 years from now, prompting won't be there and something else will be there. So I think we need to empower people and say that, focus on being adaptable because changes are going to be there now because of AI, and you have to be adaptable, you have to be curious, you have to be that learner that okay, I can learn more. I'm a lifelong learner kind of a person. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that'll help. I mean that's my version. Like what do you have to do it right now so that 5 years from now we don't regret like people are just using the tools without using their brains, which has to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. True.
So, Charu, if this entire conversation that we have had now, so if it could be reduced to just one sentence, what would you want people to remember?
I would say that build your capability uh, is one thing that should come out as an outcome of this entire discussion, that human capability is not going anywhere. But if you don't use that capability rightly, it will definitely become challenging for you. So don't let go of this precious treasure called your own cognitive abilities. But having said so, use AI tools as your companion, right? Use it as something integral which is going to be a part of your life. If not today heavily, then tomorrow it will be embedded, it will be everywhere. So use it as a companion, but keep flexing your cognitive muscle as well. That's very important, very, very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to generate new ideas. You will not be able to generate something new that only a human brain can do, right? AI also came out as a thought from some human, right? It didn't come out just like that. So yeah, your ability to create something new, think through something new, think out of the box, keep developing on new things will only come when you keep flexing your cognitive abilities and use AI as the most trustable, probably companion in the years to come. And that would become a game changer for everybody.
Definitely. And one thing I really want to say here is I've seen people, because AI has started off like in 2 years from now, and now people are using it much more because of Gen AI. So I've seen people, they are competing with AI. I mean, people are saying that, oh, AI can't do this. We can do this. Like humans can do this. So for me, I think there's no competition between humans and AI. AI is an enabler. Human is core. AI is enabler. So we have to take it along, and we do not have to compete with it. Like I had one LinkedIn post, and wherein it was I only mentioned that when automobiles came in, like cars came in, right? Did people competed with car that I have my two legs, I can run, right? I won't sit in the car. Why would I sit in the car? So people who, because there's a resistance always whenever something new comes up, there might be people who must be saying at that time that, oh, then what is the use of our legs, we'll forget and everything, we'll not use cars. So those people versus those people who learned driving, so who are better now? Obviously people who learned driving. So that's how we have to use AI. Rather than competing with AI, we have to be, use AI in a very efficient manner, though maintaining our own cognitive skills.
True,
Yeah.
true, true, true. Absolutely. Yeah. AI is going to be very, very helpful. There are a lot of things that you can do with AI for sure in the positive way. I would say that there's no competition, as you rightly mentioned. It's only a handshake that needs to happen between both the things, AI and human in loop should be there to remove the biases. Because if the AI is trained on a biased data, you would never get the right results, right? So I think human in loop would always be there, very, very critical, very, very important. Humans are not going away anywhere. It's just that you need to understand how to use this enabler to the best of your interest, to work much more effectively and to increase your own, productivity, as well as it also gives you some free time because it is taking away some of those things that are repeated and generic, that doesn't need you to be involved too much. So I think a golden handshake between both of them is the must. For that, you need to understand how this technology work rather than just taking a tool, start using by prompting things because you get a cheat sheet. So learn and then deploy or then use is what the mantra should be.
Yeah, definitely. Right. AI, why is AI? AI is for humans, right? It is to make our life easier.
Easier.
So yes, as you definitely said, it should be a golden handshake between humans and AI. Definitely. So Charu, thank you. Thank you for challenging us to think more deeply. So this wasn't just a conversation about AI, it was more of, conversation about protecting what makes us human while embracing what technology makes possible, right? Kind of a blend of both. Yeah. So it was lovely talking to you. So,
Thanks.
all, if today's episode challenged the way you think about learning, then we have achieved exactly what the learning illusion hopes to do. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, real learning doesn't begin with answers, it begins with better questions. See you in the next episode of The Learning Illusions. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.